The first impression that comes to our mind about any college: tall buildings, big classrooms, large lobby areas, thick books, IT labs, assignments, class tests, and projects. Nothing besides that. Every hour, minute, second spent here help us carving and shaping our persona, cultivating innovative mindsets for the challenging world. Learning is a lifelong process. Sharing knowledge, inculcating values of life, spark the innovative horizons of mind. Fun and frolic is the nature of every nook and corner here. A daily dose of thrill we are sure to get here.
One individual may die for an idea, but the idea will, after his death, incarnate itself in thousands of lives, said Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Good afternoon to one and all present here. I, Sufia Mirza, welcome you all to the special occasion of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose Jayanti, which is celebrated on 23rd January every year to remember and honor Netaji's vigor, as he is one of the greatest freedom fighters of India. His untiring efforts for the freedom of his nation earned him the greatest and the most respected titles of all times, Netaji. स्वतंत्रता सेनानी सुभाष चंद्र बोस का जन्म 23 जनवरी को उड़ीसा में हुआ। यह एक ऐसे राजनेता और बुद्धिजीवी थे जिन्होंने भारत के स्वतंत्रता संग्राम में अपना अतुल्य योगदान दिया। सुभाष चंद्र बोस को लोकप्रिय रूप से नेताजी भी कहा जाता है। उन्होंने स्वतंत्रता संग्राम के दौरान कई प्रसिद्ध नारे दिए, जैसे जय हिंद, जो आज भी हमारे देश की आवाम में राष्ट्रभक्ति जगाते हैं। अपनी राष्ट्रवादी सोच और आजादी की लड़ाई का हिस्सा होने के कारण नेताजी 11 बार जेल भी गए। नेताजी ने अपने नारों और अपने भाषण से युवाओं में देशभक्ति व आजादी पाने की दृढ़ इच्छा शक्ति जगाई। उन्होंने आजाद हिंद फौज का गठन किया। क्योंकि आज हम एक महान नेता को याद करने के लिए एकत्रित हुए हैं, तो मैं डॉक्टर अमरीश सक्सेना, दीन डीएमई मीडिया स्कूल से अनुरोध करूंगी कि वो आए और सभागण में उपस्थित सभी लोगों को से 2 शब्द कहें।
Thank you, Sophia. So, I mean, this SPARC organizes this function every year, which is part of our calendar. In fact, SPARC, as every member is from that only. All the students are there, and we have the distinguished guest, Dr. Rajdeep, with us. But so everybody knows as to what SPARC stands for and what all it does. So the basic thought behind is that once the students have enrolled themselves into any journalism and mass communication, now whatever papers are being taught as part of the curriculum, but there, I mean, something has to be there beyond that, wherein each individual, each student is groomed in a manner wherein he or she is well versed with the history, because I very strongly believe that anybody doing any kind of job in media, there are certain essentials which have to be there. So one is this, that you have to be well versed with the history of your country, your legacy, and particularly in the context of India, it is furthermore important for the reason because we were under a colonial rule for a very, very long period. And we came out from that rule after a very long struggle, and a lot of sacrifices were made by hundreds of people for years, for decades or for centuries. So we must know, we must have an appreciation for what our leaders did to see to this that this country become independent, because if we do not have an understanding, do not have an appreciation for this, then any media person, rather, I mean, it applies to every citizen, will be a rootless person, will be a rootless citizen, a rootless journalist, because you are not aware about your past. So you have to have this kind of understanding. And it's not only organizing an event, it's beyond that, because once the you people, the students are into organizing into any such thing, then you have to read about that personality, you have to read about the history, and you have to understand more about it, about that. And then during the course of event, during the course of deliberations, a lot of such things will happen, as it would have happened, since many of you have prepared something or the other, whether it's a skit or some poetry writing or whatever. So you had to go deep into that to understand this all. So to understand that better, because so many people contributed to India's freedom, and your generation, particularly the generation which has taken birth in 21st century, is mostly unaware as to what all has gone in the freedom, in the independence of this country. And we have an obligation to do all that which we should do, which we all should do, to protect the hard-earned freedom, to preserve those values which have been given to us by our forefathers. So for this reason, such kind of events have a lot of significance. And we are lucky, because in any program that is SPARC organizes, we always try to bring somebody who is like, I mean, from the horse's mouth, I mean, one who knows about the subject, one who knows about that personality. So that will be the most credible source for having any information, for having any understanding on any such issue on which we are assembling and discussing upon. So I welcome Mr. Rajdeep Roy in this session. He was very kind that in a very short notice, he agreed to come to this and to talk to you all. So I think that we all will be benefited by whatever he will be telling us in this session. And if there will be any queries, then few queries also he has agreed to take up from you all. So I stop here. Thank you. Back to you, Sufia.
Thank you, sir. Once Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose very well said, life loses half its interest if there is no struggle, if there is no risk to be taken. On that note, let us watch a small glimpse of Netaji's life. I request the technical team to share the video.
We should have but one desire today, the desire to die so that India may live, the desire to face a martyr's death so that the path to freedom may be paved with the martyr's blood. As freedom is not given, it is taken. After all, the reality is too big for our frail understanding to fully comprehend. Nevertheless, we have to build our life on the theory which contains the maximum truth. Subhash Chandra Bose, affectionately called Netaji, was one of the most prominent and radically renowned freedom fighters and leader of the Indian freedom struggle. Despite brilliant academic achievements, he left his government job to fight for India's independence. From 1921 to 1941, this heroic freedom fighter was imprisoned 11 times. While incarcerated, he took the role of Mayor of Calcutta in 1930. He believed that addressing an issue was never a solution alone. We needed ideas and actions to bring up a change, and his vision focused that the youth can only succeed if they are given the freedom to choose the path of their own choice. His revolutionary spirit to fight against the British makes him an unforgettable national hero.
This was prepared by Kalidas J. Srinivas, Sameer Pandita, Syed Haider Sakshi Mishra, Pranav Ahuja, Shivani Vinayak Yadav, Yash Joshi, Jai Sirohi, Chaitanya Pratap Singh, Dev Chaudhary, students of first and second year and members of SPARC. Now, I welcome today's special guest, Dr. Rajdeep Roy from West Bengal State University, Kolkata. Welcome, sir. Before we hear from sir, let me introduce him to all the students and faculty members. Dr. Rajdeep Roy is an assistant professor at the Department of Film Studies in West Bengal State University, Kolkata. He did his PhD in film studies from La Trobe University, Australia. He did his MPhil in cultural studies from Centre for Studies in Social Sciences, Calcutta, and MA in film studies from Jawadhpur University, Kolkata. He is the recipient of 1 national and 3 international doctoral and postdoctoral awards. He has submitted widely on cinema and cultural history in international renowned journal and book chapters with Routledge and Sage. His recent publication with Dr. Pritha Datta on Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose includes essays entitled Subhash Bose, The Silent Other, Fault Lines in Indian National Congress, and Skewed Reportage in 1939 elections by the statesman, and Bose, A Tryst with Politics and Press. Now I would like to request Dr. Rajdeep Roy to address the gathering.
Sorry. Yes. Thank you, everyone from SPARC. You already has shown a lot of SPARC in a brilliant presentation. And thank you especially to Amrish sir, because he has been very kind and generous to me, and I cannot say no to him. So when he approached me, one of the very interesting thing that happens to all academics like us is we tend to speak in very what we call very serious academic platforms, and sir does it 100 times more than me. So it's always very refreshing to come to these forums where we are talking directly to very young minds who are actually the future. And these are the people who will take our nation forward. When I want to talk about Subhash Chandra Bose, I want to talk about it in a fashion where I would not go into the typical history lessons that you already know. I want to tell certain stories because, histories are nothing but stories told again and again by people. Some people write it and some people say that these are right, these are wrong. And also there is an interesting thing is when we are talking about Bose in his birthday and we are talking about him, we are trying to commemorate the idea of Bose, which means that we are trying to relive the memory of Bose that we have, that has been developed over the years through our parents, through our teachers, through our everyday life. Which means that it is not only the different histories of dates and times and information, it is also about how this memory of Bose is created in our mind. And how do we engage with that kind of a memory on a day when we try to remember him, try not to forget him? So in that case, I would try to present Bose not really as a godly figure, rather as a very interesting human being whom we love, whom we try to talk to, whom we try to debate with. When something happens, when you put someone into a godly figure, then you do not love him necessarily, you show devotion to him. But when you bring him down to your level, the way you love your parents, your teachers, your friends, you are on a level ground to talk to him. So let us bring those stories forward and let us see from there where we reach. Now, 23rd January 1897, the 9th child was born in Cuttack, and he was born to an eminent lawyer, Janaki Nath Bose and Prabhavati Devi. Draupadi Devi, for that matter, was one of the famous, comes from a very famous North Calcutta family called the called the Datta Paribar from Hatkhola, which is in North Calcutta. So he was born to a family which is extremely erudite, extremely educated, a typical 19th century Bengali middle class family, the ninth child, um, a little frail, a little sickly child was born. And he went, as all major middle class families in different parts of, in India were, he went to a Catholic school, a Jesuit school. So he first went to a school in Cuttack, which is called the Protestant European School. And later on, at the age of 12, he went to a school called Ravenshaw Collegiate School. In those schools, when this native kid came and started, studying with the white British students and started getting introduced into the British way of life, that very moment, that little child found that, well, I am not equal to them, though I'm sitting on the same benches, attending the same classes, but those people are a little different from me. And the people who are outside these schools, my own people, are the ones who are not allowed to enter these spaces. So this is that moment when he realized as a young mind that there is something wrong in the world that I live. As Sir said, there is something wrong with this British colonial times in which I am born. This is also a very interesting time. The 1897 is also a very interesting time, the birth year of Bose, because this is the date when Bal Gangadhar Tilak was first arrested for a sedition case. And this is also the year when Swami Vivekananda came from Chicago after presenting to the world what we know as Sanatan Hindu Dharma. So, which means this 1897 is a very interesting year when Bose was born. In 1905, the Bose family came to Calcutta. He joined Presidency College and later on Scottish Church College, and he was studying philosophy there. So you can understand that the thoughts and the ideas and lectures that we find in Bose is deeply ingrained in his understanding of philosophy, both Indian and Western. So when he was studying philosophy, he was also very much interested with the teachings of Ramakrishna Paramhans or Vivekananda, and he was also very interested with the kind of nationalist ideas that Sri Aurobindo or Aurobindo Ghosh or Rishi Aurobindo, as you know it now, was propagating. So he was, in his youth, an extremely vibrant, young man who was trying to understand about the present situation of the nation. Later on, as he was going through these times of development, he came to a point which happens in all our households when his father, who was himself a lawyer, wanted him to join civil services. So he joined civil services. He stood forth. This is the first time an Indian, a native Indian man, was sitting with the British officers. And his father was adamant that he should join and continue to become one of those very important and powerful civil servants from in the British government. But it was not to be. He left civil services in 1921 and went into active politics, the kind of nationalist struggle that was going on during the time. And this was the first time he was introduced in person to another important historical figure, Mahatma Gandhi. It was also the time when he was entering into the active political realm with Chittaranjan Das, C.R. Das, with Motilal Nehru and Jawaharlal Nehru at the forefront of this particular milieu of people. So this is when it was happened. This is also the time. There are several other things that are happening in different parts. You in your video very interestingly talked about when Bose was a mayor, or Bose was part of the Calcutta mayorship. It is interesting to note that during that time he was very instrumental in creating various public projects on sanitations, on educations, and he was also someone who was deeply into the upliftment of the daily quality of life of the people in Calcutta municipality. This is also the time he was at loggerheads with other ideologues of the Indian National Congress parties, especially because he wanted to talk about the national struggle in a way which is more to do with the general people and their lives, and which has got a kind of a direct approach, which say Bhagat Singh, for example, took. Interestingly, this was going on, and then comes that moment when in 1938 there was that historic election in 1939 when he came out for a second time as president against the candidate Sitaramaiah, who was backed by Gandhiji. And later on he resigned, but he was also part of the Satyagraha movement that was going on in the 40s throughout India. And it was interesting that during that time, he wanted to bring down a place in Calcutta, which is considered to be one of the symbol of slavery and humiliation of the native Indian people, which is called the Hallwell Monument. So he wanted to bring those symbolic colonial architectures. And during that time, he was arrested. He was very sickly, so he was put in house arrest in Elgin Road, which is like a few kilometers away from where I stay right now. So like I am very close to history. So in Elgin Road, he was there, and in one of those January night, he disguised as a Muslim gentleman, went by car in 41 and reached Kabul, from there to Berlin, and from there he reached and tried to propagate what we know as the international travel, which sounds like a spy to some of us. In 1942, BBC declared that Bose died in a air crash. Japan said no, he was there. He wanted to meet Hitler and wanted to raise an army. He also made something interesting, which is very interesting for us as media students, that he created a Free India Center in Berlin, from where he created radio, and in Indian languages, he wanted to propagate his ideas, his thoughts, and his freedom struggle to people, because radio was used substantially in order to reach the people. In 46, it was said that he died in a car, in a plane crash. It was established, re-established, and then refuted by several authorities, and we are still going through that process of knowing whether he was really dead. And finally comes the afterlife, which brings another turn to the story of Bose, which is when suddenly in 1964, with the death of Nehru, some newspapers reported that they have seen a monk, a sannyasi, standing and paying his last homage to his dear friend. And some people call him the Bose, and some people know him as the Gumnami Baba, whom some speculate to be the Bose who has returned. Earlier, Gandhi himself said, when the news of Bose's death came in, that no, he's not dead. He will re-emerge at the opportune time, at the right moment. And this narrative of Bose, who lived a very interesting life, a life that went through many phases, and those phases are also ingrained into our national imagination. So we do not really know whether and how Bose died. We really do not know whether Gumnami Baba is the Bose incarnate. We also have different speculations about his life, but that is not what is important to us. What I wanted to say from this little snippet, this little glimpse into the life of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, is to bring forth two very important important point that I think are very, very necessary for us to take note of, to introspect in today's time. First of all, I think that Bose has to be seen as an individual who, above all, is someone who is deeply ingrained in the idea of humanism, in the idea of love for the fellow countrymen. Is someone whose every action or whose every part of his life has a deep belief in the general human goodness, in the general idea of giving and sharing with the common people, with the kind of self-belief and the kind of deep humanism with which he approached his life and approached his ideas, makes us wonder, is during this time and during his entire life of struggle, of crisis, of extreme pressure, how wonderfully, how incredibly he never lost faith in the human goodness, in the general humanity. And the second thing that I would want to talk about or try to indicate is the kind of self-belief that he has in his ideas, in his thoughts, and in his belief of what he wants for his nation. And in order to realize his dreams, his beliefs, his ideas, he has taken steps, he has taken risks, he has lived a life which is an enigma, a teaching to all of us who are trying to commemorate today. But what I wanted to warn you about as the youth of the country, as young people who wants to understand, who wants to associate with those, is first to consider him as an individual, a human being, someone who has taken, who makes mistakes, who does things, who fights, who loves, who gets angry, who makes good and bad decisions, and who believes in certain things. So in order to reach him, in order to try to follow his ideas, this is my earnest request, is please do not distant him. Please do not make him as some enigmatic, mythic, legendary, godly figure, but rather someone who is close to you, who is as close to you as your friends, as your parents, as your teachers, someone who is a flesh and blood historical figure, someone whose memory you have imbibed, you have found out through a kind of cultural memory that we have of Bose. But we have to be introspective, we have to be vigilant about the fact that we need to address Bose at a level playing ground, which Bose has told time and again, that you need to talk to me, you need to do a dialogue with me as a fellow human being, as someone whose ideas, whose thoughts who, inspire us, but they are not beyond doubt. They are not beyond arguments. We need to create an atmosphere of appreciation and debate with the idea of Bose as we go forward. And that is how we would truly be able to understand and apply Bose's ideology, his thoughts and ideas for this country to go way forward. Thank you. So if you have any questions and queries, we can always talk and discuss about it.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today and telling us about Netaji beyond the popular narrative that all of us know, from bringing him down from a person of devotion to a person that, we can look forward to and aspire to be. Thank you so much. I can see a few questions in the chat box. Our first question is from Adar. He wants to know, after knowing the ideologies and various roles Bose played, I have to ask, if Bose had survived, how would he have influenced policy making and popular thought in independent India?
No, very wonderful question. Well, I know, first of all, let me give you a little speculative thing. Some people said that when Gumnami Baba came in, he would take in the reign and he would enter into the politics, reveal himself and saying that, look, I am back. But he didn't do it. That is interesting. If he is Bose, he didn't do it. He refused to enter into politics. Now, so when different people has talked to that quote unquote monk, he said that the idea of entering into the politics in the very first time was not for personal gain or power. My impetus was to try to, the very idea was, how do I make my country free, my people free? And what is the best option to do it? And during that time, that was the best option. But right now, in the 60s or the 70s, probably staying in your home, in your library, and trying to understand and self-realize yourself is probably the way to free yourself. Now, I don't know if Bose, what Bose would have done if he entered politics in the 50s, say, or 60s. But what I could assure you is whatever he would have done when he made forward bloc coming out of the Congress, it was not something to grab power. It was something to say that, look, in Congress, we have different kinds of thoughts. Some people are, and none of them are wrong. When Gandhi was talking about a kind of ideas, which I, as a radical, do not find very effective. So I wanted to bring forth another idea. So there was a platform to do that till 1939. When it was not there in the party, he left it and he went to his, brilliant sojourn throughout the world. So if he were to do politics in the political scene today, the first and foremost that he would have done is he would have again got to jail, because he would have again created some kind of a ruckus with the authority. He would have told time and again that, like he did in Hartal or during the mayorship or during the time of his association with different government bodies in pre-independent India, he would have questioned for the common people, for the policies that are being going on. So like when he was in Calcutta municipality, he was adamant that the Grand Trunk Canal project, which was a very major project, that has to be done. Now he would have, talked about the same kind of issues even today. A person never changes. So which means if Bose was doing politics today, we would have seen a lot of protests, probably in Facebook Live, I guess, and a lot of things that are happening where, because he never minced his words. So, which is something I would expect it to happen even today. And you people are the representative of Bose. I expect nothing less from you.
Thank you so much, sir. Our next question is from Syed. He wants to know, what are the lessons and insights we take from Bose for the 21st century networked world, and where the nation is being when the nation is being divided between religion and caste. I think this is again a shout
Yes.
out to Bose's conviction.
Look, when Bose was going through his presidentship, and before that, in the 20s, one of the main things that he wanted to talk about is we need to have a country which cannot be divided on communal fault lines, on caste fault lines, and those kinds of things that have been marring, that have been destroying our national and social fabric for thousands of years. It is not something new, which means that this is something that he understood from the very outset. So at this moment, if we want to take the teachings of Bose forward at a time when these elements are again coming into the forefront, the two things that I told during our talk as well. One, you are bound to question the things that are happening in front of you, and you have to have the self-belief about asking the right questions to people, to your fellow people, and to the people who are in the authority. And second, you should never ever feel dejected about the fact, this is something that happens to us every day. I mean, why will I talk about certain things? Why will I argue about certain things? Because nothing is happening. Even my dearest friend doesn't agree with me. No one seems to be bothered. Believe me that even at the height of nationalist movement, the majority of the Indians didn't even care whether the British rule is to be taken, is to be, got rid of or not. Think of Bose's father himself. He wanted him to be a very well-established civil servant. So, and the same stories that happens with our parents as well. Everyone, and there's nothing wrong in it, everyone wants a very secured life for their kids. But you have to ask yourself, what according to you is something to fight for? So I think in today's time, history has taught us that times really do not change. It's like a circle. It's not a straight line. Things tend to repeat itself in after certain intervals of time. And if you are really someone who studies time, who is in some way or the other conscious of how the time flows, you will understand that you are probably doing or are bound to do the same mistakes that were done 50 years back. So Bose teaches us not to repeat the same mistakes. And it also teaches us that really it only takes at every point in human history, it is only one or two people who wanted to think differently. And those are the people who influenced, after a lot of struggle, a large group of people to follow the ideas. So I think all of you as leaders of the future should learn that never ever take a back seat when you want to fight for your belief, for your ideas. And second, never ever lose faith in your fellow human beings, because that is a disaster. We cannot live in isolation. So we have to, whatever whatever problem we have with our neighbors, we have to live, we have to coexist together.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to combine questions now since there are a lot of them. So this is
Sorry, I talk a lot for every question. Now I'll be short and sweet.
So this is from Sir Agam and Khushi. They want to know what inspired you the most about Netaji and what were the difficulties you faced while writing your essays and while doing your research.
Well, what inspired me most, the problem is the inspiration was there from the birth. Look, I am a Bengali, and Bengalis are obsessed with three people nowadays. First, it was Tagore and Bose, and now now Sourav Ganguly has added to the four. But we still are obsessed with Bose and Tagore was obsessed with Bose. So this is something that was inbuilt as I was growing since birth. So the problem was not inspiration. The problem was demystifying these inspiration when I was working on Bose. Say, when you are working on Bose, you have to be objective as an academic. So if you are, blindly in love with that figure, how can you find truth about that figure? So that was that was something that I had to go through. Me and my fellow writer, who was also my PhD scholar, and we had to go through this, unlearning all the things that we thought to be the gospel of truth. Well, no, I mean, we all have calendars of Bose riding a horse to the sunset, a kind of a Western film kind of an image. We have, in Shambhajar in North Calcutta, we have an entire statue of Bose riding with his in a horse. So we already have that Martian figure into our head. It was something to bring him down. I mean, from that grand, enigmatic, legendary, godly figure of Bose to someone who is probably used to stay like 5 kilometers away from me in a little house on Elgin Road, not a little house, quite a big house, and someone who would probably have done the same thing that I do from morning till dusk. He sleeps, he eats, so he gets stomach aches. So that is something that we had to come through. And the second thing, thing that the problem that we had while writing about Bose is the problem that we have with any kind of history, which is part memory, part history, part cultural memory. You know, how can I write about Gumnami Baba without resorting to speculations? Where does history stops and where does memory starts? So that is the reason why I use the word histoire, which is a French word for history, which means stories. Our storytelling tradition, Mahabharata, for example, is also itihas. So this idea of history as a very objective, date, ordained thing is a very European idea. We always had a story of history, which is like little stories that are being told by our grandmothers and our forefathers time and time and again. And those are the things that we should be thinking about. That is something that we have to grope through while writing about it. Anyway, yes.
Sir, I see some students have raised their hands. I feel they want to also ask questions on camera. Vinayak?
So my question is, like, during the pre-independence, there was a statement from Muhammad Ali Jinnah that if Subhash Chandra Bose is Prime Minister of India, I don't want Pakistan. So how was Subhash Chandra Bose able to influence the Muslim leaders?
Well, as far as I know, these are, provocative words and lines that has come in popular culture. I don't think there is a real evidence of these things. First of all, Mr. Jinnah is not the only person who can give away or take in Pakistan. I mean, this kind of idea is so feudal in the sense that it seems as if this is my kingdom and I want to give it away to people. Who are you to give something away to person? You are a democratically elected person, if at all it is. So if you want, if that would have happened, even then Bose would never be in a position, at least ideologically, to take something which is not his. I mean, the land called India, pre-independence India, undivided India, the land is not something that makes a nation. It is the people that makes a nation. Nation is an idea. So which means if the people are divided, how does it matter whether a part of the portion of the land is here or there? The more important thing is whether every one of us are on the same page or not. And during that time, 47, that was the root problem. We as general common Indians were in two different worlds. If our minds are divided, no amount of patriotic song can make us come closer. No amount of cricket matches can make us come closer. It is all in my mind. So which means that the idea should be to bring those minds closer to each other. And the land is a physical material entity. That doesn't matter. It's the people that matters.
Thank you, sir. Ananya, you can go ahead.
Hello, sir. So my question is, do you think the meaning of freedom has changed with the generation? Like what freedom meant in 1947 and what freedom means in 2022? If so, how would you define freedom as?
Well, you would be able to define it better than me because, compared to you, I am prehistoric. But at the same time, look, every generation has a different idea of freedom. If you think of the 14th century Europe, the so-called medieval ages of Europe, the witch hunts were going on. So what is freedom to those women? The freedom is they could speak freely to people. Is this an issue today? I don't know. So, which means that in your generation, what is the idea of freedom is something that you have to decide yourself. But at the same time, you have to take lessons from the years bygone, because certain issues will remain the same. Like, are women free in their own household even now? I don't think so. So even now, are we free from this information overload? Can we say for certain that when we are exchanging ideas in front of us, some algorithm is taking care of it and is deciding how much of it would be disseminated and how much of it would be left blank? So you never know. So which means your idea of freedom is something that you have to decide on your own, which is both individual. You as a human being, the way you have lived your life is very different from the way someone your age has lived your life in, I don't know, in Poland, for example, in Angola, for example, in Afghanistan, for example. So your individual life will decide upon your idea of freedom, and at the same time, your collective reality, where you stay in Delhi, in Noida, in your hometown, and so on, will decide your freedom.
Thank you, sir. Now I still have questions, but because of paucity of time, I think I'll move on with the program. Sophia, over to you.
Yes.
Netaji once said, "We should have but one desire today, the desire to die, so that India may live." We all remember his courageous zeal towards the Indian national freedom movement. His famous slogan, "तुम मुझे खून दो, मैं तुम्हें आजादी दूंगा," still reverberates in our spirits. Netaji was a brilliant student. As Rajdeep sir mentioned, despite cracking the Indian Civil Services examination, he resigned from the government post to fight for India's freedom. He was known to be the editor of Forward newspaper, introduced by his mentor, Chidranjan Das. Let us watch a presentation titled Rubaru with Netaji by Aftansh Dubey, Jay Sirohi, Pratham Dhawan, Akshita Sharma, Chaitanya Pratap Singh, Cherry Kharbanda, Kashish Singh, Vinayak Yadav, Sajal Mishra, Kalidas J. Srinivas, Sameer Pandita, Mahima Gupta, and Hani Khurana, members of SPARC. I request the technical team to play the video.
One individual may die for an idea, but the idea will, after his death, incarnate itself in thousands of lives. These beautiful words were quoted by none other than Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Netaji was born in Cuttack, Odisha in 1897, had his education in Kolkata and went to the Indian Civil Services ICS. However, he was not used to the kind of comfort and convenience that came with his employment. He was a warrior who had to fight for his country's independence. The life of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose is one of a struggle. It is a story of a young dreamer who tells a story of consciousness, struggle, and success in every eye. One who has the power to rip the ground with his arms. One who talks about punching a hole in the sky. One who is eager to achieve his goals. One who refuses to accept anything for free. And one who is willing to spill his blood if he wants freedom. Thousands of individuals gave their lives in response to Netaji's request. He quickly gathered an army to fight the British.
Not only embraced the independence cause enthusiastically, but he also became a symbol of liberty. He began preparing to rule the country with the phrase, "तुम मुझे खून दो, मैं तुम्हें आजादी दूंगा." His ideology and such appeal that anybody who would listen to him would be drawn to him. His popularity soared and he was dubbed Netaji by the public. Success is built on the foundation of failure. Bose lived by this attitude and motivated others to do the same. Netaji had setbacks on multiple occasions, but he overcame them through his own perseverance. He passed every test with flying colors. whether it was municipal politics, his rise from common congressman to the position of Congress president, the founding of the Forward Bloc, or the struggle of the Indian National Army.
He was so devoted to Bharat Mata that his country, which was enslaved, would not allow him to dwell in peace. He piqued interests of people far beyond India's boundaries. Netaji enlisted support of heads of states from around the world, and he fanned the flames of liberation struggle far beyond India's borders. He gathered an army and presented to countries' adversaries as Azad Hind Fauj, Indian National Army. He breathed new life to the slogan Dilli Chalo. Thousands of his 60,000 strong army men gave their life for the country. Bose welcomed Mahatma Gandhi's leadership, but unfortunately, Gandhi was his catalyst for leaving him Congress. Although both the leaders were respectful of one another.
Madhya Pradesh Jabalpur had a significant role in Netaji's life. His life was changed by Narmada's banks. The Tripoli Congress had met in Jabalpur from March 4 to 11 in 1939. Despite his failing health, he arrived on a stretcher to take part. After that, on July 4, 1939, he returned to Jabalpur to create the Forward Bloc. Madhya Pradesh inhabitants had a close bond with Netaji. Every town in the state had an award named after him. Success may be distant, but it is vital, said Subhash Chandra Bose to his colleagues.
Governor and former Chief Justice of Calcutta High Court P.V. Chakravarti mentioned, writing in a letter about Britain Prime Minister Clement Attlee's visit to Kolkata in 1956. Clement Attlee was the Prime Minister of Britain at the time of India's independence. Justice Chakravarti writes that he asked Clement the reason behind the Britain's decision to grant India's independence. Attlee responded that one of the main reasons was Indian Army and Navy awarding loyalty to Britain. Due to Boss Azad Hind Fauj increased military activity. Clement reply throws light on Boss' significant contribution.
Almost 3 decades before Prime Minister Narendra Modi began his popular radio program Man Ki Baat, freedom fighter Subhash Chandra Bose had spearheaded his very own radio program Azad Hind Radio. Standing at one of the crossroads of world history, I solemnly declare on behalf of all the freedom-loving Indians in India and abroad that we shall continue to fight British imperialism till India is once again mistress of her own destiny, he said on 28th of Feb 1942, declaring war against long-time colonial rulers on air.
Cuttack-born leader, popularly known as Netaji, staunch believer of the ideas that the armed struggle was India's only route to independence. Part of the radical wing of the Indian National Congress in the 1920s. He had to eventually a part of the party following the difference with Mahatma Gandhi and other senior leaders. After setting up Free India Center in Berlin, Bose started Azad Hind Radio with the German radio service, which first aired on 7 January 1942. A widespread German-funded operation, the program meant to showcase the solidarity with the Indians living in abroad as well as those still living in the subcontinent. They include news bulletin transmitted in English, Bengali, Gujarati, Marathi, Pashto, Tamil, Persian, and Telugu.
Radio's presence in India dates back to the colonial era. Quite notably, but the establishment of the All Indian Radio under the tutelage of BBC's Lionel Fielding. As historian Diya Gupta points out in her paper Raj in Radio Wars, broadcasting became a tool for the transitional propaganda during the time of World War II. If radio had become a tool in the domestic war being fought with the Indian national movement, listening to the radio had become an act of community, and Subhash Chandra Bose was at the center of it all. Broadcasting from Berlin, Bose celebrated the wave of Japanese victories over the British, territories and passionately spoke about India's quit movement. This explains why in 1940, Indian holders of radio license were prohibited from publicly disseminating excess broadcasting.
Bose continued his broadcasts and overseas transmission to India from Germany and eventually Southeast Asia right up until June 1945. Even after his Indian National Army was defeated by the British in 1944. As interest in Bose's life and legacy has never diminished, several museums have been dedicated to his complicated life, with a place for his Azad Hind radio. Several attempts have been made to archive the transcripts of his radio addresses, and his ancestral house in Cuttack was turned into Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose Birthplace Museum, with rooms dedicated to the Azad Hind radio and the National Bank of Azad Hind. While conspiracy theories and mystery shroud Bose's last day, what cannot be denied is that, whether on the field or on air, he had only one dream for India: Azadi.
हमारी राह चाहे कितनी भी कष्टदायक हो, हमारी राह चाहे कितनी भी भयानक और पथरीली क्यों ना हो, फिर भी हमें आगे बढ़ना ही होगा। सफलता का दिन दूर हो सकता है, पर उसका आना अनिवार्य है। नेताजी की इन्हीं बातों से प्रेरित होकर डीएमई मीडिया स्कूल के छात्रों की भावनाएं एक कविता के रूप में प्रस्तुत हैं। इस कविता के साथ प्रस्तुत हैं स्पार्क के छात्र सैयद हैदर, प्रिया मिश्रा, मिलन माला, इशिका श्रॉ, विनायक यादव, शशांक मिश्रा, शांभवी श्री, शिक्षा और समीर पंडिता। अब मैं टेक्निकल टीम से अनुरोध करती हूँ कि वो वीडियो प्रस्तुत करें।
आज़ादी की जंग देख कई पीछे हटा करते थे, किंतु कई अटल बुलंद इरादे इतिहास रचा करते थे। आज़ाद हिंद फौज ने लिखी जो ये महान पुरुष की कहानी है, जिसके संघर्ष और दृढ़ निश्चय से स्वतंत्रता हमारी जुबानी है।
अतुल न डिगा सका, ऐसा महाकाव्य तुम्हारा है। स्वतंत्रता का सपना तुमने अपने लहू से संवारा है, अपने लहू से संवारा है।
वो दिन था 23 जनवरी का, जब एक वीर योद्धा का जन्म हुआ। ओडिशा के कटक शहर में जानकी नाथ और प्रभावती का अंश हुआ। कोलकाता से शिक्षा लेकर कैम्ब्रिज में संपन्न हुआ। सिविल सर्विस का ठाना था जो चौथा स्थान उन्हें प्राप्त हुआ।
जब दौर अंधेरे का आया, अंग्रेजों ने था कहर ढाया। खून बहा जैसे पानी, बस देश को दे अपनी जवानी।
ना कभी अन्याय सहा उसने और न कभी शीश झुकाया था। स्वतंत्रता के लिए तब उसने आजाद हिंद फौज बनाया था।
लहजा नरम और खून गरम, जो देश की खातिर मिट जाए। कोई सुभाष, कोई बोस कहे, जिसकी आजादी की रफ्तार हर कतरा कतरा टिक जाए।
वो अड़ा रहा कि जिसने सपने आजादी के देखे थे, उस अटल अड़िग के आगे घुटने अंग्रेजों ने टेके थे। आज उसी की जय जयकार करते, उसी का गीत हम गाते हैं। उसी के संघर्ष से भारत का अमर बुलाते हैं, भारत का अमर बुलाते हैं।
Netaji was a spiritual patriot himself. Netaji's psyche was heavily influenced by Swami Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa. He was 15 when he first came across the works of Swami Vivekananda, following which his eternal inclination towards spirituality manifested, and the revolution within him grew manifold. He believed both the spiritual gurus were two aspects of one invisible personality. And now I would request Dr. Susmita Bala, head the ME Media School, to give concluding remarks.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you so much, Dr. Rajdeep Roy, for narrating such interesting stories which helped us in understanding Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose in a better manner. Subhash Chandra Bose was such a tall leader that listening about him fills us with the spirit of nationalism. We start to think about our hard-earned freedom. सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के बाद उन्होंने जो जापान की हेल्प से आज़ाद हिंद फौज का गठन किया था, और आप जानते हैं संगठन के प्रतीक चिन्ह के रूप में उन्होंने दहाड़ते बाघ का चित्र उसमें बना होता था। आप समझ सकते होंगे कि उसका उनके लिए मतलब क्या था। उसका मतलब यही था कि जो भी प्रॉब्लम सामने आए उसको रिजॉल्व करना है और उसको सबके सामने रखना है। तो इम्पोर्टेंट है कि सुभाष चंद्र बोस ने हमारे लिए क्या क्या किया। Subhash Chandra Bose was a great human being. He was a patriot to the core. He was a person of strong conviction. As Dr. Rajdeep told us, we should treat Subhash Chandra Bose as an individual, but I think he was an extraordinary person. We all Indians owe to Subhash Chandra Bose. Today is the day to remember him and pay our respect to him. उनके दिए गए एक स्लोगन को हम लोग हर पार्टी भी यूज करती है और सारे लोग यूज करते हैं, जय हिंद का नारा। लेकिन कितने लोगों को ये पता है कि जय हिंद का नारा एक्चुअली दिया किसने था? हमारे लिए इम्पोर्टेंट है कि हम जैसा कि राजदीप जी ने भी कहा कि हम उन सारी बातों को याद करें, रिकॉल करें और ना केवल उनको एक गॉड की तरह केवल प्रेजेंट करें या सोचें समझें। उनकी जो सेइंग्स थी, उनकी जो बात थी, उसको हमें किस तरह से लेना है, किस तरह से उसका यूज करना है। और बेसिकली सुभाष चंद्र बोस यंग जनरेशन के लिए यूथ थे, तो यूथ के लिए ही उन्होंने बहुत कुछ काम किया और उन्होंने ब्रिगेडियर भी बनाई, तो वो यूथ की थी। इसलिए हमें इस जनरेशन को, यूथ्स को इसके बारे में बहुत सोचना चाहिए कि उन्होंने जो कहा, उन्होंने जो किया। और स्पार्क जो हमारी ये ग्रुप है, ये संगठन भी इसी तरह का एक संगठन है जो बहुत कुछ कर सकता है, बहुत कुछ सोच सकता है, बहुत सारे एक्सपेरिमेंट कर सकता है, बहुत सारी चीजें कर सकता है। सो थैंक यू ऑल फॉर ज्वाइनिंग दिस सेशन एंड थैंक्स टू राजदीप जी। बहुत 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 अच्छा लगा और बहुत अच्छा प्रोग्राम स्टूडेंट्स ने किया। थैंक यू, थैंक्स टू ऑल ऑफ यू।
Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you, ma'am, for inviting me. Amrish sir, and all the fellow students of SPARC. They are wonderful, wonderful students you have. You are very privileged to have those students among you. It's a wonderful experience for me to talk here, to connect with you people. Thank you so much.
थैंक यू। और अभी लेटेस्ट एक न्यूज ये भी है कि सुभाष चंद्र बोस जी की प्रतिमा इंडिया गेट के पास वहां लगाई जाएगी। ये बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट है हम सबके लिए कि वो उनको इतना सम्मान देश हमारा वैसे तो दे ही रहा है, लेकिन ये इस रूप में दे रहा है, ये भी बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट बात है।
Thank you, ma'am. Now I would like to express my gratitude to our special guest for the day, Dr. Rajdeep Roy, for your precious time. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the management of Delhi Metropolitan Education. I would like to thank Dr. Amrish Saxena, Dean DME Media School, and Dr. Susmita Bala, Head DME Media School, for their constant support and guidance. I thank the coordinator of today's program, Kalidas J. Srinivas and Sameer Pandita. I thank today's student team that made this program possible and worked tirelessly. Syed Haider, Sakshi Mishra, Praman Ahuja, Shivani Singh, Vinayak Yadav, Yash Joshi, Jai Sirohi, Chaitanya Pratap Singh, Dev Chaudhary, Jigyasa Khanna, Priya Mishra, Milan Malla, Ishika Shah, Shank Mishra, Shambhavi Shri, Shiksha, Avtansh Dubey, Pratham Dhawan, Akshata Sharma, Cherry Kharbanda, Kashish Singh, Sajal Mishra, Mahima Gupta, Hani Khurana, Akshata Sharma, Ananta Gupta, Naitik Bhatt, Adhar Sethi, Rivanshi, and Aryan Khanna. I would also like to thank Ms. Mudita Raj and Ms. Kruti BS, Assistant Professor and SPARC Faculty Facilitators, Shreya Jha and Shruti Pandey, Student Conveners of SPARC. Last but not the least, I show my gratitude to all the participants and audience for joining us today. Now, I, Himakshi Datta, along with Sufia Mirza and Ananya Verma, would like to take your leave. Have a nice day ahead.
The first impression that comes to our mind about any college: tall buildings, big classrooms, large lobby areas, thick books, IT labs, assignments, class tests, and projects, Nothing besides that. Every hour, minute, second spent here help us carving and shaping our persona, cultivating innovative mindsets for the challenging world. Learning is a lifelong process. Sharing knowledge, inculcating values of life, spark the innovative horizons of mind. Fun and frolic is the nature of every nook and corner here. A daily dose of thrill we are sure to get here.